There is a reason I believe it is not yet Uhuru. A reason I believe that Africa is not where it ought to be. But I'm confident that as Africans, we can do something about it. Because we are the only continent in the world where there are many people who don't seem to know where we are, other than us. It's the only place where people feel they have a right to offend us, where they feel that they have a right to lose hope in us. Well, I've traveled the continent, and I've seen the optimism. I've seen our people. I've seen us. Had a bit of fun, a bit of adventure, climbing mountains, riding camels in Egypt, skydiving in Namibia. Then, of course, I also decided it's important to try and also get to recollect, get to connect with some of the difficult moments of our history from the days of colonialism, going through all the gates of no return. And of course, some of the difficult parts of our continent's history is what we have done to each other, to ourselves. But then also decided one needs to have a little bit of fun. One needs to dress up, be like everybody, be into the culture. Because that's how you get to experience every country. Then eat everything that I could find. And I mean everything, everywhere. And the odd bush meat where I could find it. You know, I must tell you, I actually did not even know what I was eating because I was enjoying what I was eating. And I asked my driver, what did we just have? Because it was special. And he said to me, fresh meat. I said, fresh meat? What kind of meat? Because I'm actually enjoying this. And he said, fresh meat. So I could see he was getting a bit irritated. So as we left the place in Equatorial Guinea, just about a meter or so, I saw people chopping off heads off of monkeys, off of big rats. So I said to my driver, what are they doing? And he says to me, they're preparing fresh meat. So I know what I had. I enjoyed it nonetheless. But of course, of all the countries in the continent, there's perhaps no one country that I've been to the most than this country, Ghana, the country of Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame, to me, was the embodiment, the essence of Pan-Africanism. He laid out an agenda on the 24th of May, 1963, for the transformation of this continent. He says, we must industrialize. We must create a unified monetary zone. We must create a single market. We must create a single defense mechanism for the continent. We must create a common African citizenship. Well, we know what's happened. Many of our leaders pretty much slept through the entire 60 years. In 1993, 30 years later, after Kwame laid out this vision, this grand vision of the continent, the Europeans introduced it in Europe for the European because they could see the vision. So what have we done in the last 60 years or so since this great vision? Well, I'll tell you what. If you look at this continent, a continent where it is estimated that there is $900 billion of consumer spend available. What have we done with that? Every year, I have conducted Brand Africa 100, Africa's Best Brand Survey. And in this survey has revealed some interesting insights as to what we have done or what we are doing with our consumer spending. Because 20% of the brands that Africans admire over the last 10 years of doing this survey, we have established that 20% of the brands that Africans admire are not made in Africa. So 80% of our agenda is externalized. Our money is being spent on brands which are not made in Africa, owned by a few non-African brands. The Ethiopians took on brands such as Starbucks for coffee. I mean, we all know coffee comes from Ethiopia, so it should make sense that it is Ethiopian. But of course, Starbucks saw the opportunity And the Ethiopians didn't take this lying down. After a long protracted battle, they reached an agreement. The Ethiopian coffee growers are doing a whole lot better than they did before. And the Ethiopians understood the power laid in branding their products. And that is why I've decided to start Africa Brand Leadership Academy, because I want to ensure that us as Africans, we prepare the next generation, the entrepreneurs, and the people who are leading brands to shape, to sharpen their minds, to build the brands that are going to build the continent. So what do we need to do? The first proposition is we need to build resilient private sector so that we can create great African brands. That's my first proposition for us. And now, there's no other place where we are challenged as a continent as in telling our own story. How crazy is this? That of all the media that is being created about Africa, all the stories that are being generated about Africa, 63% of the media agencies around the world or the media owners around the world do not even have correspondents here in this continent. And of all that international content being generated about the continent, 1% of it comes from African correspondents. So we're not telling our own story. And the story that they tell about us, 81% of the story is more the hard news, what they call the hard news, the mostly largely political. They're talking about politics, about elections, about conflict, about poverty, and less about our progress. It is not a surprise, because if you look at what we as Africans have identified as our most admired brands in the Brand Africa 100, 70% of those brands, or those media brands, are not African. So how can we expect the story to be ours? That's why Chinua Achebe said, until the lion learns how to tell its own story, tales of the hunter will be glorified. My proposition, we need to reclaim and invest in the African story. You know from my pictures that I showed earlier that I enjoy a meal or two. But of course, there's no meal that you can enjoy better in West Africa, here in Ghana, and everywhere else than jollof. There's that odd battle between Nigeria, Senegal, Gambia, and Ghana as to who makes the best jollof. But nothing incensed us more than when Jamie Oliver tried to recreate our jollof. How dare you take our traditional dish and Europeanize it? Then there's a story of Rich Mnisi. Rich decided to take the traditional Shibelani, of which he is a member of the tribe, to take the Shibelani dress, which generally goes for like $50 or so. He decided to add quality materials, quality finishing, quality packaging, in other words, to add value to the traditional dress and sell it for $3,000. South Africans went mad. They said, how dare you? How dare you take our culture and overprice it? Guess who's buying it? The Africans and the rest of the world. My favorite story is a young man, Tshepo, who specializes in jeans. So Tshepo decided to come up with the jeans, named them Tshepo, and sells them for $50. South Africans said, are you mad? Why would I buy a jean by a guy called Tshepo that I bump into every day? And then Meghan Markle came to South Africa, bought a pair of the jeans for herself and for the young Archie, the prince. Thereafter, the Africans were all over. The South Africans were all over. They said, Tshepo, what do you mean you do not have stock? We need to get these jeans at 3 times the price. Because the problem that we have as Africans is we always wait for somebody to validate us before we can accept that which is our own from our own. What we do best is to go glorify the global brands, to be seen wearing the Gucci's, the Louis Vuittons, and all those, by people we've never heard of: Stefano Ricci, Ralph Lauren, Dolce & Gabbana, Giorgio Armani, Jimmy Choo. We've never met those people. We can't relate to them. Who are they? People called Tommy Hilfiger. I don't know how true this is, but it's all over the internet. When I used to live in America, it was the one story that Tommy used to say, if I knew my clothes were going to be worn by niggers, I would not have made them. The biggest star in the world, Lewis Hamilton, is an ambassador for Tommy Hilfiger. I wonder what Tommy is saying now. If it is true, that is what he said. So the third most important thing that I propose we do, we need to value and to protect our own ideas. We need to create the value and add the value to our own ideas before somebody else comes and do that and disrespects us. The one topic that's quite interesting for me is this idea about appropriation or appreciation. It's so prevalent in the continent because whenever somebody does something with one of our ideas, we say they're appropriating it. Louis Vuitton took the Basotho blanket, which sells for about $50, repackaged it, moved it into another form, and sold it for $3,000. Guess who bought the most of it? Africans. But guess what the Africans were saying? They were mad. How could you take our culture and try and sell it for, how could they take our culture and sell it for so much? It wasn't yours. The blanket came with the British. They gave it to the king as a gift. So who is appropriating whose culture? Or the one thing that we see everywhere in the continent, the beautiful fabrics. Every single region, country has got a name for them because it's beautiful, and we call it African fabric. Well, it's Vlisco from Holland from 1841. We've appropriated it. It's now ours. Even the African presidents, when they want to be African, they use pieces of the fabric. What we need to be doing instead is appreciating our own culture. Like our good friend, Tunde Owolabi from Ethnic in Nigeria. He looked into the Yoruba culture and said, why can't I create a fabric out of our own culture? Our own fabric. Or the young man from South Africa, Ladu Mangokolo, who took the Maxhosa culture and took that very sacred culture and transformed it into what is now the most desired, culturally inspired knitwear brand in the world. For us to move forward, we need to do what Fela said. We need to identify with Africa, and then we'll have an identity. So my proposition, celebrate your culture. Own your own culture. Then there is who we are, how we are, our demographics. The average age or the median age of politicians in our continent is about 62. But the median age of all Africans is 19. We're a youthful continent run by old men and women. The youth are not going to take this line anymore. They will rebel against us because they want to be part of the decisions that are being made about their future. We do not have a problem in this continent. As Sir Liv Johnson said, we're not a poor continent, we're just poorly led. My proposition, include the young and the women in the decisions about this continent. I was in Burkina Faso and I just bumped into these young men. They were protesting against the CFR. I understand it. The currency of the Francophone countries, or many of the Francophone countries, is pegged against the euro and guaranteed by the French. We're in Africa. So I understand their frustrations. I'm confused by the fact that to travel the continent, I had to use over 30 currencies. 30 currencies. And yet, when there is an agreement to create, if you will, a common currency like the ECO in West Africa, or what the Francophone countries are trying to do to get rid of the CFR, there's no agreement. We have yet to move forward with that proposition. Yet, in the brand Africa, 100 most admired brands in the continent, the majority of the banking brands, the financial services brands that we go to are African, created by Africans, but the money isn't ours, at least in one region. Or rather, they are trading in multiple currencies. is complicating the most important thing, which is intra-Africa trade. We're among the lowest in the world. Matter of fact, we're the lowest when it comes to intra-Africa trade, 15 to 18%. And that is why it is so important what the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is trying to achieve. Move us from 18% intra-Africa trade to 50% intra-Africa trade by 2030. It's a lofty goal, but it's a good goal. It's the goal that Kwame Nkrumah spoke about in 1963. Finally, we are getting there. And this is the year we're going to test it. My proposition, make it easy for us to trade and to transact. Reduce the complexity. Then you know I've traveled, obviously. You know I've used 11 passports, all South African, all African, obviously. I tell you, that's about what, 30, 40 visas I had to go through just to get through the continent. But what was more interesting is the routes I had to take. I had to go around the continent, through the continent, past the continent, to come back into the continent using multiple visas. Of course, there's an agreement a few years ago to introduce the Africa passport. It is time we did that. It is time we liberalized the air transport market as well, because we need to make it easy for Africans to travel Africa. We talk about the fact that Africa's time is now. We've been saying that since 1957, when the first sub-Saharan African country, Ghana, this Republic of Ghana, got its independence. Is it really our time now? Because the examples that I've gone through show you that we still have a long way to go. And that's why sometimes it is easy to understand when we get offended and people look at our continent with derision. What we need to do is to understand that we have a challenge in our hands. As Ngugi wa Thiong'o put it, if we want to turn Africa into a new Europe or a new America or a new Asia, then let us leave our destiny to the countries in Europe, Asia, and India. They will know how to do it better than the most gifted among us. Until then, it is not yet Uhuru.